Right, now we have a wonderful panel for all of you. So I want to introduce Michael Dean, who is the Director of Employee Experience at Peakon, and he's here today to lead our panel discussion on what's required to build a great employee experience. So Michael, can you just come and introduce your panel for us?
Great. Thank you. Silicon Valley has given us new ways to stay connected, new ways to share photos, new ways to order food. But it's not always given us best practice when it comes to HR. I think we can all think of a few recent examples. But my panel here, when we all discussed the new level of employee experience driven by Airbnb, when it infused its customer ethos into how it designed the organization, we realized this term had spread far and wide. So I'd like to invite the panel on stage now to discuss why this has become a strategic priority for all of our businesses. So first we have Emma from easyJet. Emma, would you like to start us off?
Yes, I'm very happy to do that. So good morning, everyone. So at easyJet, hopefully many of you are customers of our airline. We recently changed our ambition, our purpose of our organisation from making travel easy and affordable, which I think is something which we have achieved, to creating the warmest welcome in the sky, and to truly differentiate the service that we provide to our customers through the warmth of the welcome they receive when they're on board. And what I think kind of really resonated with me about that was that that welcome is delivered by our people. And we know that our people are our single biggest differentiator when it comes to our customer satisfaction scores, particularly in times of kind of inevitable disruption. And I think when I think about how we create an environment that allows our people to deliver that experience to our customers, just thinking about how engaged they are isn't enough, because actually we already have strong levels of engagement within our people population. And actually, kind of what we really need to be thinking, kind of just as the previous speaker was talking about, was exactly what are those pain points that our people are experiencing 24/7, 365 days a year, and really understand what's getting in the way of them doing an even better job for our airline. Once we know what those pain points are, once we understand what that experience is, that's when we can get to the root cause and identify the right solutions that help them to be more productive at work.
So Luc, how does that compare to Adecco?
I mean, I cannot relate more to what you said, and I think we all agree that employees, they are the core of any and every businesses, whatever the level of automation. And now I know we talked about artificial intelligence and robotics, but there are people behind, always, and they will always be. So I think being conscious and designing this experience from the time people are joining the company until the time they are exiting is really key. Yeah? Really have a thought through this experience. What do you want to give? And keep this type of mutual relationship.
A couple of builds on that. I'd say two things. One is a similar theme that at Edelman, as in your experience, we have a principle by which we say we should be doing for ourselves what we recommend to our clients. And the work that I lead in the organization is all around helping clients to inform, engage, and then ultimately mobilize their employees. But in some ways, before we started to use Peakon and reinforce and then initiate actions on the base of feedback, I'm not sure we were truly doing for ourselves what we were recommending to clients. In fact, we were kind of the cobbler's children in some ways. And then the second thing I would say is we're pretty widely known for our annual trust barometer, which we've been doing for 19 years. And some of you in the audience will have seen in the last couple of years, the insight that's been most enriching for HR leaders has been that the relationship between employees and their employer is the most trusted relationship among all institutions. So that is an opportunity, but it's also a challenge because, as one speaker said this morning, the expectations of employees have dramatically changed in recent times. And so if you expect to earn the trust of employees, you need to have that relationship go both ways. It's not top-down anymore. You need to reinforce things like empowerment, et cetera. And again, our Peakon insights have helped us to not only reinforce some of the things what we're already doing, but to initiate some new activities.
Great. So good afternoon, good morning everybody. I don't know if it's morning or afternoon, just about. So at QinetiQ, we are a defence and engineering company, and so we're operating in a tough talent marketplace. So for us, we need to attract and develop and retain the very best technical talent. And in a STEM talent market, that means that very often experience is the differentiator. So, we're in a situation where we are creating world-class solutions for our customers. And so for our people to be able to do that, we need to create the right environment, the right experience for them, and allow them to really focus on doing their great work and perhaps remove some of the distractions or maybe some of those lower level irritations that sometimes get in the way. So, that's the critical piece for us.
Thanks, Claire. So maybe, Nigel, I'd like to build on a little bit what you said about how this whole process kind of flips the script to how we develop organizations now. It used to be all about top-down and policies, maybe enforcing the annual engagement survey, whereas now the employee voice is actually the driving force here. But I'm not sure we're all, or everyone would be that comfortable with that. How does that not get completely out of control?
It's a great question. So, some of the pitfalls potentially of going out to employees on such a regular basis is, and I heard this in Tokyo last week, our leader there said, well, are we not risking, fatigue around surveys? And we heard this earlier from our guest speaker that what's really important is that leaders recognize that listening to employees and acting on their feedback on a very regular basis is part of and core to great leadership. And that's kind of what I said to the leader in this case. The second pitfall there for him was, well, one of the verbatim comments was that I'm a very traditional and old world leader. I said, well, okay, is that a theme that's recurring in the Peakon feedback, or is that one comment? And he said, well, as far as I'm concerned, the way that I'm dressing now and the way that I'm reacting is a response to that feedback, and it's not just one-off. And I said, well, let's just be sure that we're focusing on the things that will make the single biggest difference. And then I guess the last piece is, and it came up again earlier, is how well are you communicating the feedback and reinforcing that the actions that you're taking are not just ticking a box and not just, you said we're doing, but this is going to be a long-term sustainable impact on our culture. Maybe that's a starting point.
I think another important aspect, for example, in my case, is really your culture. Yeah. Your company culture, your values, your mission. This is not just something that should be a communication exercise, but something that should be lived, because if you want to trust and empower your managers, it will be the frame they will be able to act on, and they will have this freedom as well. So if you have a strong culture, strong values, strong mission, obviously your managers know what they have to do as well at their level. And I agree with you, we try as well to be bottom up now. So really to trust and empower our managers, because we are as well trusting our own culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. I think from easyJet's point of view, we are clearly kind of what defines us is low cost. And so historically, the way in which we've run the organisation, the metrics we've used to assess the success of the organisation have been kind of driven by cost. How quickly can we turn the planes? What's our on-time performance like? What's our profit per seat? But I actually think that by adopting more of a continuous listening approach, what it's allowed us to do is unlock kind of other pieces of the data jigsaw to really understand the impact on people of running a low-cost business. And I think what we actually found was that the culture that we had was actually really taking its toll on our people. And so while we kind of recognise the need to continue to deliver the right results and the right kind of manage the expectations of our investors, what we were able to do was understand also where that relationship between profit and people was not optimal, and particularly again in times of disruption, we know that our people were fatigued, and that was coming out loud and clear in our surveys. So we've really started to adjust how we run the organisation based on the feedback we've received, not just to deliver the cost metrics, but also to think about the people experience that we're delivering as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a big cultural shift, isn't it? I think a lot of organisations typically have looked to senior leadership for all of the answers and to solve all of the problems. And I think what a continuous listening approach gives you as an organisation is it taps into some of that silent voice as well. So maybe you now hear from those people who didn't really have a voice before, and that unlocks fresh insights and different insights, and the solutions to unlock some organisational problems now come from different places. So I think there is quite a cultural shift there.
And I think just to relate to that, I've been in a couple of situations with leadership and top management where actually when we debriefed about this continuously listening approach and about the metrics that we've got, the reaction were like, okay, we need to do this, we need to plan this. So the typical top-down approach, and this is where you have to say, yeah, wait, digest a little bit this, and trust your people, yeah? Yes. Because this is in this moment, actually, that you can see that these people, they feel responsible and accountable for each and everything, but they are not necessarily trusting the others to be at this level. And this is really now, I would say, this shift that people, even you, me, at any level, we are really accountable and responsible about what we bring to the company and things we can do. And we can do things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think what's interesting is we're not just talking about the kind of employee well-being agenda here, something that we kind of associate with employee experience, but it's actually the business agenda, right? It's the experience of getting work done in the business, about being productive. Mm-hmm. Does that change the relationship that HR then has with the managers of the business?
Yeah, certainly. I think the role of HR it changes very much, and it's more about really supporting managers and help them work with the insights that data can give them, and providing tools to help them do that. And perhaps typically HR teams have been in a position where they kind of want to make it all right for everybody and make it okay for managers, and in some respects to do a line manager's job for them. And so this very much is about empowering the managers and getting behind them, coaching, facilitating, and helping unlock that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other thing that we've really used to our advantage is how we manage change and how we help our organisation leaders to deliver change successfully. So I think as well as asking kind of standard engagement questions, we really make sure that we think about what are the questions that we want to ask that give our managers the insight that they need to understand whether or not only are they doing a great job as a leader in creating a kind of energising environment, but actually are the changes that we're deploying within the organisation landing effectively. So a great example of that might be we're currently in the process of rolling out iPads to all of our cabin crew, and we're using our continuous listening approach to really understand how effectively that's going, if people understand how to use the tools. So it gives our managers the ability to ask the questions that they want the answers for, but also the questions that our people actually want to answer. And then that's when I think you get the sweet spot, both the engagement survey questions, but also the ones that are going to help you manage change more effectively as well.
And it's not an easy journey, I would say, for both HR and management, because this relationship has been set up in stone for years and people know what they can expect from each other, and now things are moving and really shifting. So I think both people in their role, they have to be open as well to a new kind of relationship. And of course, as I said, it's mutual. So you are giving something as well. You are bringing values on both sides. And I think that's the important thing. But it required time as well because this is new. Yeah, this is really new.
I'd say for our HR leaders, the insights that we've been given now on a much more regular basis, I said this before, have done two things. One, to actually reinforce initiatives that had already been underway. So you had said at the outset that that well-being, it's not just about well-being, but we've all brought that theme up that for us, like for easyJet, one of the probably the leading piece of feedback that we got was that people in our organization, sort of 7,000 strong and 70 offices, were feeling like they could use some help with their mental and physical well-being. Well, we already had a healthy lifestyle program, but it didn't have the context. So we relaunched a Live Well program. We relaunched our Will app, which is a mental wellness app, with the context of, here's the feedback that you gave us, and then support leaders to give local messaging around why we're doing this, how we're doing this, and how you can get involved.
Yeah. When we talked previously, you mentioned that the local aspect of this is a big differentiator, right?
Yeah, it's really important because while you as an organization you probably will have sort of overarching global themes, I think the real magic has been, particularly when you're continuously listening, is when you're getting some local tailored feedback, not just in the verbatim comments, but in the ongoing themes. And they are really unique to different markets. So a leader is able to stand up and say, you've seen the messaging at a global level about this well-being program that we're doing. One of the pieces of feedback that we heard here was that folks are lacking the understanding or the connection between the global strategy and the local strategy. And then, as I said last week in one of our markets, the leader was able to say, and here are the 3 things that I'm suggesting that we do about that, but I'd really like your feedback on whether that's the right action, because this is going to be the new normal here.
Yeah, and I think there's something about HR helping the organisation to learn how to learn, you know, and to create, you know, environments where people can share what has worked for them, perhaps share also what didn't work for them, and to learn from that. You know, so I think creating those conversations is a key role for HR.
For sure.
Because just like here, HR is probably one of the functions, probably more than any other, that is aware about these differences, because employee experience, not customer, but it's more experiences. There are as many experiences as employees in an organization, and I would say the HR function is well positioned to really be aware about these diversities. So that's why I think they are key as well in this transition and transformation.
Yeah. And Claire, you gave us some examples of how you've kind of increased participation in these activities as well with managers, right?
Yeah, I think you know, we've done quite a lot to really get behind our managers and help them you know, really use the insights and the feedback and to create that right sort of environment and experience. So you know, we have put in place some simple toolkits and frameworks. So, you know, we're promoting a model called, you know, share, act and close the loop, because I think there's a really important element of listening, which is that you need to kind of visibly be seen to be listening. So, you know, going back and sharing and being very open and transparent about the feedback themes that have come through, not trying to hide any of that, really acting with integrity. And, you know, demonstrating what action has been taken as a result, because then people will go again. You know, so actually I can see and feel that, you know, somebody is listening to this, and I can visibly feel and see some action that's been taken as a result. And I think that's a really important aspect.
I think kind of building on that, one topic which always kind of comes up when you meet somebody who's adopted a continuous listening approach. The first question that they always ask is, how often are you surveying? And in easyJet, we have actually moved now in some of our bases and in some of our teams to a monthly surveying approach. And I kind of know the Capgemini guys earlier on were saying, actually, maybe that was too frequently. But what we found in adopting monthly is that actually the kinds of feedback that we get from our people is actually just more what's on their mind, something that went well last week or that didn't go so well the week before. And it actually becomes less about the big stuff in terms of pay or well-being or, you know, the way where we work and kind of the environment we're working in, and actually much more of a daily conversation about how people are actually feeling day to day about the jobs that they're doing. And so I know in my team, for example, you know, I feel significantly less burden to have a great big action plan in place. And actually, I feel much more empowered as a manager just to be able to read my Peakon feedback every month and know what's on my people's minds. And I don't have to wait for the next quarter, or I've not got somebody saying, but where's the action plan? Actually, it's just part of how I lead my team and part of how all our managers lead our teams. And so as much as it's a leap of faith going monthly, what we found is actually that's completely changed the conversation that we're having with our people.
Yeah, and I think it's quite insightful. You know, for a manager, yeah, sure, getting a load of feedback can be tough. You know, particularly if there's some, you know, some tough reading in there. But I think at the same time, what we've found is some of our managers are really starting to see the impact and understand what their own role and the impact of their actions and their leadership approach is taking on their team. And they're now getting a massive sense of, you know, accomplishment because they're seeing the results come through, you know, in their feedback. You know, so it kind of makes you feel good and it gives you confirmation that perhaps you're on the right track.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's really a two-ways approach, yeah? So it's two ways of communication. It's not just like having the feedback and listening, but as well giving back, yeah? So you need to have as well these returns because every time we fill a survey, I mean, if we don't have any return on that, this is just a loss of time, just simply a loss of time. So having this type of relationship now that is able or enabled by tools or solutions like Peakon is really good, but at the end, people need to talk together as well and do something, act upon what they see, what they analyze, and realize.
Yeah.
One thing we've kind of talked a little bit about previously, it's been a bit like these big surveys give you big problems, right? But when you can actually get down to more continuous feedback, you actually get to some of the things that are a little bit more meaningful. And you described a bit about what actually is most important in employee experience and what's driving that at easyJet.
So I think one of the most interesting things for me about our journey has been that we have incredibly high net promoter scores. So in some of our bases, our cabin crew will report net promoter scores in excess of 50, in some instances in excess of 60, the kind of net promoter scores that, you know, many companies wouldn't be able to buy. And actually, what really struck me about that is that these guys are doing jobs, they're effectively, you know, they're on their feet all day. It's not a great paid job, it's an average paid job. Actually, sometimes they get into really difficult situations with customers or with the plane. You know, actually, it's a tough role. And what I found really interesting was that that's their day-to-day experience at work, and yet they're incredibly happy and positive about the job that they do. And actually, I know from kind of looking at the feedback that that's because they love the company they work for, they love their colleagues, and they love working with our customers. So I think sometimes you have to not get stuck in the trap of thinking that everyone wants gym membership or a bowl of fruit, and that actually those are the things that actually really make the difference. What I think makes a difference is people who feel they have opportunity to be themselves. They have the opportunity to do the work that they love doing, and that they're empowered to serve their customers and get on with their jobs. And you know, I didn't expect to see that people in such difficult roles would have such a high net promoter score. And so it really gets you thinking about, well, what is a good job?
Yeah. So that's not very Silicon Valley at all, right? It's not about flashy offices, but
well,
where have you seen that you've...
I would say in the Adecco group, it's a little bit the same. I'm not there for long, and I was really surprised because it's a tough industry. We have a tough competition, sometimes low margin, but we have highly engaged people, really highly engaged people. Why? Because the sense of mission, the sense of purpose is there and really visible and known and lived. It's bringing let's say, people to employers, etc. So people are there to bring solution, and they are getting this return as well. They see the impact of what they are doing in the real life. So actually having a strong sense of mission, a strong sense of purpose is really key in the work or industry you are in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we ask a question which is just, what's the best thing that's happened to you in the past month? And, you know, overwhelmingly, the themes that come through there is just somebody noticed me and somebody said thank you. Somebody just acknowledged what I was doing. So it's a thank you from a colleague or your manager or a customer. And that's probably the biggest learning that we've taken from it, is just the power of a thank you.
See, I'd say, you know, we often speak at conferences about technology and the virtual world, et cetera, and I think that's such an important point. I often tell the story of my father's retirement party, which was quite a long time ago. When at the end of the party, this fellow ran up to me and said, Nigel, I'd like to give you this little note. And it was an envelope with this chap's name. His name happened to be Bob. I recognized my father's writing, and inside was exactly what you just described. It was a note that he left at his station, if you will, in the workplace, welcoming him back to the office after some time off for illness, talked about his family, and talked about what the team as a whole were trying to do and how he coming back will be a huge enabler of that. He said, Nigel, I've had this for 20 years, and it's been the single biggest driver of my happiness and connection here over the years. So sometimes, as much as things change and we have all of these virtual tools, that simple connection, which can be a handwritten note, moment of recognition and reinforcement of personal purpose, can be massively reinforced.
Moments that matter.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Now, we've talked about improving the workplace internally, but what about the relationship that employee experience actually has with external stakeholders? I know, Claire, that actually this has made a big impact at QinetiQ.
Yeah, it has. And interestingly, our shareholders are very, very interested in what are we doing to create the right experience for you know, that STEM talent that we have working in the organisation. So yeah, we have a lot of investor questions around that. What is our strategy? What is our plan? What sort of progress are we making? And our external board is very, very focused on this as well. So it's kind of got equal focus now, I would say, alongside some of the, you know, the business strategy itself. It's seen very much part of that, which is great.
Another nice example I have in mind is that recently the country manager of Singapore in our group actually shared publicly within LinkedIn his engagement and NPS score. It was a complete surprise for me because there was no communication plan behind or nothing like that, but basically he was so proud of that he shared that, and obviously shared that with everybody, including stakeholders, shareholders, etc. So I think it's sometimes a great proof of recognition for his people in Singapore about what they are doing, to thank them as well for the work they are doing on a daily basis, because again, it's hard and it's good to have this kind of feedback as well from a country manager.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we report our engagement score as part of our kind of annual report. It's part of the suite of KPIs that, you know, we hold ourselves to account, both internally and also externally. And I think it's that kind of external accountability actually, which again adds that extra dimension of making sure that we do follow up on what we're promising to do for our people.
So to wrap up, really, how would you kind of advise the audience to actually go about enacting some of these policies in their organisation? Where do you think we should start?
I think for me, it's about being very open and transparent about what you are trying to do, why that's important, you know, what perhaps is different to things that have been done in the past. And I think acting with absolute integrity and openness and honesty.
So I'd come back then to a theme that we talked about earlier, and it's been a theme throughout the day, is, you know, one of the core drivers of employee engagement and an amazing experience is the strength of your leaders. So I would just go back to that message that this is, if it's important to the organization, it's got to be important to the leaders, and they have to be authentic in wanting to drive a great employee experience. So as the organization has to say, this is one of the two top key things that you do as leaders. If you say that and you mean it, then leaders will embrace it.
I would say don't be afraid to experiment. There is a certain, I would say, notion of being perfect always the first time, avoid failures, etc. But this is where you learn the most. I know sometimes leaders don't like to hear that, but experimenting, piloting is usually for me a great advice to give. Don't be afraid to experiment, to learn, to as well, improve the experience, because experience is always something that will change over time, and context matters a lot.
And be transparent about it.
Exactly.
Tell people, hey, listen, we're going to try this together. Let's see how it works.
Exactly.
Yeah, I suppose, again, reflecting on our journey, I'd say know what you're going to do with the data. Again, reflecting on the Capgemini presentation earlier on, 400,000 comments in one survey is actually incredible, and clearly the technology itself helps you to find the needles in the haystack in terms of the nuggets of the things that you need to focus on, but also think about who else in the organization needs to see this data. Kind of don't just take the whole monkey on your back. Don't leave it all to the line managers. Don't take all of that burden on your back as a person within the HR function. Who are the other subject matters experts in the organization who also need that insight, and how you're going to get that to them in the most efficient way so that they can act on it as well.
Right. Emma, Luc, Nigel and Claire, thank you very much for your insights. Cheers.
That's right, please.
Thank you. Thank you to our panel. As there are 4 of you, even though we have lots of questions, I'm going to have to choose the most popular question, if you don't mind. So, employee experience is one of the most talked about areas of HR at the moment. What is employee experience to you when you compare it to employer brand, engagement, culture, etc.? So, should we start with you, please?
Yeah, sure. I think, I suppose the whole thing is very connected to your external brand and your external image. And I suppose what you don't want is a disconnect between what you project externally. You may, project a lovely, shiny exterior, and internally the reality is very, very different. So I do think that there's something very important about how you keep that honest and true. And that you act with the right intent.
Yeah, I think you've actually done a fantastic job with this at QinetiQ, right? And actually changing the tone of how you're communicating on LinkedIn based on the kind of experience internally.
Yeah, we've been trying to really change that whole external image and just put it out there a little bit more. A lot of people didn't know what we were doing. Now they do.
Yeah, so I'd agree with what you just said there. I'd be curious, maybe over the lunch hour, to see if people agree with this, but I have seen it written and said that employee experience has replaced employee engagement, and I'd just like to say I disagree with that. Employee experience is the entire journey that an employee has with an organization, from the time they're recruited to the time, in some cases, they become an alumni. Engagement is the measure of that. So engagement is the output, and it's what we measure, for example, with Peakon, is the outcome of the total experience that an employee has in the organization.
Yeah, completely agree.
And I think the experience is the conscious decision about what expectation you set at this different moment of truth or moment that matters, let's say. But really be conscious about what you want, what you expect, what you want people to live, etc. So be conscious about that as well. And this is, for me, the experience, when you consciously project what you have in mind.
Correct. Yeah.
You have the unenviable task of going last.
I mean, I think I'm really, really excited to work in HR with such amazing tools, and actually kind of going from something which is quite conceptual, like employer brand, to something which can actually be broken down, deconstructed, an experience. What does it take to change that experience? I think it's a complete gift for us, and we're very lucky that as HR professionals and as leaders, we have fantastic tools to help us to change that experience, to create a more productive environment every day for our people.
Summarized as use Peakon.
Or any other continuous listening platform.
Continuous listening.
No, but this is something I'm saying quite often to people, because especially the ones in my organization, because there are for sure scores and results, and they always tell me like what should be the objective, what should be the benchmark. So they always have these kind of goals in mind. And I say, your objective is just to be better than yourself. Just try to improve, be better than yourself, because engagement is going up and down. This is a never-ending story, as we said, along the employee life
This
cycle.
break does have to come to an end, I'm afraid, Michael.
Yeah?
So, Michael, do you want to wrap it up for us?
Yes, be more, I think, if that was wrapping up the last comment. But I think, to me, like, the employee experience is also about the process. I would entirely agree. It's about understanding what people want from a job, understanding what it's like every day and at each step of that life cycle, and then making the changes that actually make the difference.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Can we have a massive round of applause? You guys off this way. Thank you.